The autumn air was crisp as Denzel Washington's car pulled up to Mount Vernon High School. Golden leaves scattered across the parking lot, dancing in the gentle breeze that swept through Westchester County, New York. Through the window, he gazed at the brick building where his journey had begun decades ago. The school looked smaller than he remembered, yet strangely unchanged. "We're right on schedule, Mr. Washington," his assistant said, checking her tablet. "The principal will meet you at the entrance. Your motivational talk starts in 45 minutes. Denzel nodded, his eyes still fixed on the school. "It's been a long time," he murmured, more to himself than to her. As he stepped out of the car, the cool October air filled his lungs. Students gathered near the entrance, their excited whispers growing louder when they spotted him. He smiled warmly, waving as he approached the building. Principal Diane Foster greeted him with a firm handshake. "Mr. Washington, it's an honor to have you back at Mount Vernon. Your journey from these halls to Hollywood continues to inspire our students." "The honor is mine," Denzel replied, his voice carrying the genuine humility that had become his trademark. "This place shaped me in ways I'm still discovering." As they walked through the corridors, memories flooded back. The lockers had been repainted, the floors refinished, but the essence remained the same. Students and teachers lined the hallways, some recording on their phones, others simply staring in awe. "We've prepared the auditorium for your talk," Principal Foster continued, guiding him through the familiar layout. "Over 400 students are waiting." Denzel stopped abruptly. Ahead of them, an elderly man in a gray uniform was slowly mopping the floor, his weathered hands gripping the handle with practiced ease. There was something achingly familiar about his stooped posture, about the methodical way he moved. "Is that?" Denzel's voice trailed off. The old janitor turned slightly at the commotion, and Denzel caught a glimpse of his profile. Even with the added wrinkles and the white hair, there was no mistaking that face. "Mr. Roberto?" Denzel called out, breaking away from the entourage. The old man looked up, squinting through thick glasses. Recognition dawned slowly in his eyes, followed by a smile that transformed his tired face. "Young Denzel," he said, his voice raspy but warm. "My God, look at you." Without hesitation, Denzel embraced the frail man, careful not to hold him too tightly. The smell of pine cleaner and mint gum brought back a flood of memories. "You're still here," Denzel said, pulling back to look at the janitor's face. "After all these years." "Mr. Roberto Gonzalez," chuckled softly. "Where else would I be? These floors don't mop themselves." Principal Foster stepped forward, clearly surprised by the interaction. "You two know each other?" "Know each other?" Denzel said, keeping a gentle hand on the old man's shoulder. "Mr. Roberto is the reason I didn't give up when everyone else said I should." The janitor waved dismissively. "I didn't do anything special. Just told you what you needed to hear." But Denzel shook his head. "You did more than that. When I was failing algebra and about to lose my basketball eligibility, you stayed after hours to help me study. When I was cut from the play my junior year, you were the one who convinced me to try again." Roberto's eyes glistened. "You remembered. How could I forget?" Denzel turned to Principal Foster. "How old are you now, Mr. Roberto?" 81 next month," the janitor answered before the principal could speak. Denzel's expression shifted, concern replacing nostalgia. "And you're still working full-time?" Roberto shrugged. "Life doesn't get cheaper, son." The principal checked her watch nervously. Mr. Washington, I don't mean to rush you, but the students, of course, Denzel nodded. Mr. Roberto, will you be here after my talk? I'd like to catch up properly. The old janitor smiled. Same place I've been for 47 years. I'm not going anywhere. As they continued toward the auditorium, Denzel's mind was elsewhere. The sight of those aged hands gripping the mop handle had stirred something deep within him. Behind him, Roberto returned to his work, moving slowly but deliberately, just as he had done every day for nearly half a century. The auditorium buzzed with excitement, but even as Denzel delivered his carefully prepared speech about perseverance and believing in oneself, his thoughts kept returning to the old janitor still working the hallways of Mount Vernon High. The auditorium erupted in thunderous applause as Denzel concluded his speech. Students and faculty rose to their feet, their admiration palpable in the air. Principal Foster approached the podium, beaming with pride. Thank you, Mr. Washington, for those inspiring words. I'm sure everyone here will carry your message forward. Denzel nodded graciously, but his mind had already shifted back to the unexpected encounter in the hallway. As the crowd dispersed and the obligatory photos were taken, he leaned toward his assistant. I need an hour before we head to the airport, he whispered. She frowned slightly, checking her tablet. But the interview with... Reschedule it, he said firmly. This is important. After extricating himself from the crowd of admirers, Denzel made his way back to the east wing of the school. The hallways were quieter now, most students having returned to their classrooms. He found Mr. Roberto in a supply closet, organizing cleaning products on metal shelves. There you are, Denzel said, startling the old man slightly. Roberto turned, a bottle of disinfectant in his gnarled hands. Your speech is over already? Those kids got lucky. When you were a student, Principal Williams would have made you talk for at least 2 hours. His eyes crinkled with humor. Denzel laughed. Some things change. Speaking of which, is there somewhere we can talk privately? Roberto seemed surprised but nodded. Teacher's lounge should be empty now. The teacher's lounge was indeed vacant, its worn furniture and dated decor speaking to the limited budget of a public school. Coffee stained the countertop near an ancient machine, and motivational posters from at least 3 different decades adorned the walls. Still the same old room, Denzel observed, settling into a chair that creaked under his weight. Roberto lowered himself carefully into the seat across from him, his movements betraying the arthritis that had settled in his joints. They replaced the coffee maker in '98. That was our big upgrade. For a moment, neither spoke. Denzel studied the man who had once seemed so tall and strong to a teenage boy. Time had bent his frame and stolen his vigor, but not his dignity. Mr. Roberto, why are you still working? At your age, shouldn't you be enjoying retirement? The old janitor's smile faded slightly. Retirement is for people with options, son. What about your pension? After 47 years, school janitors don't get the kind of pensions you might think, Roberto interrupted gently. And what I have goes to medical bills and rent. Denzel leaned forward. Medical bills? Are you ill? Roberto shook his head. Not me. My grandson, Miguel. He's 15, has cerebral palsy. Been living with me since my daughter passed 3 years ago. The revelation hung heavy in the air. Denzel remembered hearing about Maria Gonzalez's death. A brief mention in the local paper about a former Mount Vernon graduate succumbing to cancer. But he hadn't made the connection. I'm sorry about Maria. She was always kind to everyone. Roberto nodded, his weathered hands clasping together. She was a good girl, single mother, worked 2 jobs. When she got sick, there was no one else to take Miguel. His father hasn't been in the picture since before he was born. And you've been caring for him alone, while working full-time. We manage, Roberto said with quiet dignity. My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, checks on him after school until I get home. The medical bills are the hardest part. Even with Medicaid, the therapies he needs. He trailed off, then straightened his shoulders. But we're okay. Miguel's a bright boy. He's going to finish school, maybe even college if we can figure out the finances. Denzel was silent for a moment, processing what he'd heard. The contrast was stark. His own life of privilege and acclaim set against the quiet struggle of a man who had given so much to others. Where do you live now? He asked finally. Same place as when you were in school. The apartment complex on Westchester Avenue. They've raised the rent 4 times in 5 years, but it's close to Miguel's doctor's. Before Denzel could respond, the door to the lounge opened. A young teacher entered, then froze when she recognized the famous actor. I'm so sorry, she stammered. I didn't mean to interrupt. It's fine, Denzel assured her with a warm smile. We were just catching up. The teacher retreated quickly, but the moment had been broken. Roberto glanced at his watch and began to rise. I should get back to work. The gym floor needs buffing before tomorrow's assembly. Denzel stood as well, placing a gentle hand on the older man's shoulder. Mr. Roberto, I want to help. Please let me. The janitor's expression softened, but there was pride in his eyes. You've got a good heart, Denzel. Always did. But we're okay, really. At least let me visit Miguel. I'd like to meet him. Roberto hesitated, then nodded slowly. He'd like that. He's seen all your movies, you know? Even the ones I tell him he's too young for. A small smile played at his lips. Denzel pulled out his phone. Give me your address and phone number. I'll come by tonight, if that works for you. As Roberto recited his contact information, Denzel made a decision. His assistant wouldn't be happy about the schedule changes. But some things were more important than interviews and appearances. The man who had believed in him when no one else did deserved more than a brief conversation in a dingy teacher's lounge. After they parted ways, Denzel stood in the empty hallway for a long moment. Through a nearby window, he could see students on the playing field, their carefree movements a stark contrast to the stooped figure of the elderly janitor, now making his way slowly toward the gymnasium. With newfound determination, he pulled out his phone and dialed his assistant. Cancel everything for the next 2 days, he said without preamble, and get me the number for my financial advisor. I need to make some arrangements. The modest apartment on Westchester Avenue was exactly as Roberto had described. Small, dated, but meticulously clean. Denzel stood in the cramped living room, watching Miguel's eyes widen with disbelief. You're really him, the teenager whispered from his wheelchair. Despite his physical limitations, Miguel's intelligence shone through his expressive brown eyes. Eyes that reminded Denzel of Maria. I am. Denzel smiled warmly. And your grandfather is one of the most important people in my life. Roberto, who had changed from his work uniform into a faded button-down shirt, looked embarrassed. I just did what anyone would do. No, Denzel said firmly. You did what few would do. You saw potential in a troubled kid and refused to let him fail. As the evening progressed, Denzel observed the challenges of their daily life. The narrow doorways that made maneuvering Miguel's wheelchair difficult, the specialized equipment crowding the small space, the way Roberto winced when he bent to adjust his grandson's blanket. I have something for you, Denzel said as he prepared to leave. He handed Roberto an envelope. The old janitor opened it hesitantly, then gasped. I can't accept this. It's not charity, it's repayment, Denzel insisted. But that's just the beginning. 3 weeks later, a black SUV pulled up to Mount Vernon High. Roberto, summoned to the principal's office, was surprised to find Denzel waiting with a team of people and Principal Foster, who looked like she was struggling to contain her excitement. "What's going on?" Roberto asked, confused. Denzel stepped forward. "Remember when I said that was just the beginning? I meant it." What unfolded next left the entire school in shock. Cameras rolled, not for publicity, but to document the moment for those who couldn't be present. Denzel unveiled his plan: a fully funded scholarship in Roberto Gonzalez's name for Mount Vernon students pursuing careers in education or community service. Next came the announcement of a complete renovation for the school's maintenance facilities and a substantial raise for all support staff. But the most emotional revelation was saved for last. "Mr. Roberto," Denzel said, his voice thick with emotion, "you spent 47 years taking care of this school and its students. Now it's time someone took care of you." He handed Roberto a set of keys and showed him photos of a new, wheelchair-accessible house just 10 minutes from the school. "The mortgage is paid in full, and there's a trust for Miguel's medical needs and college education." Roberto's hands trembled as he accepted the keys. "I don't understand. Why?" "Because you taught me the most important lesson I've ever learned," Denzel replied, tears welling in his eyes. "You showed me that real strength isn't about fame or success. It's about showing up every day and doing what's right, especially when it's hard." The auditorium, now filled with students and staff who had been quietly assembled, erupted in applause. Miguel, who had been brought in secretly, wheeled forward and took his grandfather's hand. "There's one more thing," Denzel said when the noise subsided. He turned to Principal Foster, who stepped forward with an official-looking document. "Mr. Roberto, the school board has unanimously voted to rename the East Wing of Mount Vernon High. From now on, it will be the Roberto Gonzalez Wing, in honor of your decades of service." The elderly janitor, who had maintained his composure until now, finally broke down. Tears streamed down his weathered face as students, many of whom had barely noticed him in the hallways, gave him a standing ovation. Later, as the excitement died down and the crowd dispersed, Denzel and Roberto stood alone in the hallway where they had reconnected weeks earlier. "You've changed our lives," Roberto said quietly. Denzel shook his head. "No, you changed mine first. I just took longer to return the favor." As he walked away from Mount Vernon High that day, Denzel felt a completion he had never experienced on any movie set or award stage. The crowd of reporters that had gathered outside, tipped off about the event despite his attempts at privacy, shouted questions about his secret charity work. Denzel simply smiled. "It's not about me," he told them. "It's about recognizing the heroes who walk among us unnoticed. Sometimes the most important people in our lives are the ones we look right past." The story made headlines across the country, but the real impact was felt in the halls of Mount Vernon High, where students began to see the invisible workers who made their education possible. And in a new house not far away, an 81-year-old former janitor finally hung up his mop, free to devote his remaining years to his grandson. The true measure of a person, Denzel reflected as he boarded his flight back to Los Angeles, isn't found in moments of glory, but in quiet acts of compassion when no one is watching. Mr. Roberto had taught him that lesson decades ago, and at last he had managed to pass it on.